From surgeon to YouTube success. Ever wondered what happens when a brilliant surgeon decides to trade his operating theater for a YouTube studio? Well, you're about to find out. And trust me, the journey is absolutely mine. Picture this. Dr. John has spent over 2 decades saving lives as a vascular surgeon. He's the kind of bloke who could perform complex heart surgery with his eyes closed. But now he's stepping into completely uncharted territory. The wild, wonderful, and sometimes utterly confusing world of YouTube content creation. Here's the thing that'll shock you. In just a few short weeks of creating content, John's already seeing early success. But like so many of us trying to build our online presence, he's drowning in conflicting advice about how to actually grow his channel effectively. Sound familiar? If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the different strategies, conflicting opinions, and endless guru advice floating around online, then mate, you're in for a treat. Because today, we're going to slice through all that confusion like a surgeon's scalpel and build a crystal clear roadmap for success. And here's the beautiful part. John's journey isn't just about building a YouTube channel. It's about something much bigger. It's about taking decades of life-saving knowledge and amplifying it to help millions of people around the world. If you're trying to grow your own voice and make a real impact online, then pay close attention, because John's story might just hold the key to unlocking yours. Now, before we dive into the nitty-gritty, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you have valuable knowledge locked away in your head, but you just don't know how to get it out there to the people who need it most? If so, drop a comment below and let me know what expertise you're sitting on. I read every single comment, and who knows, your story might feature in a future video. And if you're new here, welcome to the community. The only place that helps you believe in yourself daily, one video at a time. Right then, let's get stuck in. So there we were, connected with Dr. John. And the first thing that strikes you about this man is his genuine desire to help people. He's not just another content creator looking to make a quick buck. This is someone who's dedicated his entire professional life to healing people. And now he wants to scale that impact through the power of digital content. I'm completely new to this whole YouTube thing, John tells us, and you can hear both excitement and uncertainty in his voice. Maybe it's been 8 or 10 weeks since we started, something like that. Everything about this is brand new to me. Now, here's where it gets interesting. They've only uploaded 4 or 5 videos, but they're already getting decent traction. Not bad for a complete beginner, right? But here's the problem that's keeping John up at night. He's getting mixed signals from different marketing teams. And trust me, this is something that happens to almost everyone who starts taking their online presence seriously. You suddenly find yourself working with various consultants, agencies, and advisors, and they all have different opinions about what you should be doing. It's like having 5 different GPS systems all telling you to take different routes to the same destination. Confusing doesn't even begin to cover it. So John poses this absolutely crucial question that I bet loads of you have been wondering about. Should YouTube Shorts be on a separate channel, or should they live on your main channel alongside your long-form content? Now, this is where things get really interesting, because this decision can literally make or break your channel's growth trajectory, one team told John to create a separate channel for Shorts, and initially, that made complete sense to him. The logic seemed sound. But then another team swooped in and said, No, you definitely want your Shorts on your main channel. That separate channel advice is outdated. The algorithm has changed. Can you see how frustrating this must be? Here's a man who can perform life-saving surgery, but when it comes to YouTube strategy, he's getting pulled in completely opposite directions. So let's settle this once and for all, shall we? The answer is, keep them separate. And here's exactly why this matters so much more than most people realize. There are 2 fundamental problems with mixing Shorts and long-form content on the same channel, and both of them can absolutely destroy your growth potential if you're not careful. Problem number 1. Audience behavior. The people who watch your Shorts simply don't watch your long-form content. I know. The theory sounds lovely, doesn't it? Someone discovers you through a short, gets interested in your expertise, and then binge watches all your long-form educational content. But here's the brutal reality. It just doesn't work that way. When you look at the actual data, And this is something you can check in your YouTube Studio analytics. You'll see that the overlap between short viewers and long-form viewers is tiny. We're talking single-digit percentages. Here, what's actually happening is that you're building two completely separate audiences. Some people watch your shorts, some people watch your long-form content, but very few watch both. It's like running two different shows for two different crowds. Now, on the surface, that might not seem terrible. After all, you're still reaching people, right? But here's where problem number 2 comes in. And this one's a real killer when you're trying to grow through suggested traffic, which is absolutely crucial for long-form educational content. Having shorts on your channel completely messes up the algorithm's understanding of who you are and what you're about. Let me paint you a picture of how this works. Imagine you've created a brilliant video about vein health. Naturally, you'd want that video to be suggested after other videos about vein health, cardiovascular wellness, or general medical advice. That's how you build authority in your niche and attract the right audience. But when you have shorts on the same channel, something bizarre starts happening. Your carefully crafted medical content starts getting suggested alongside completely random videos. We're talking about your vein health videos showing up after content about kids in supermarkets, random political videos, or viral TikTok-style content. Why does this happen? Because the Shorts algorithm works on constant dopamine hits. The longer someone spends in the Shorts section, the more varied content they'll see. They might watch a medical short, then a cooking short, then a random viral moment, then a political clip. The algorithm is designed to keep people scrolling, not to keep them within specific topics. Compare that to long-form content, where the algorithm actually tries to keep people within their areas of interest. If someone starts watching health-related videos, the algorithm will continue suggesting more health content during that viewing session. So, when your audience comes from shorts, your long-form content gets recommended against completely unrelated videos. And here's the kicker. It doesn't matter how good your content is. It doesn't matter how compelling your thumbnail or title might be. When your video about cardiovascular health appears right after a video about some random viral moment, you're showing it to completely the wrong audience. You'll never get good click-through rates. You'll never get good retention. And it's not because your content is valuable. It's because it's being shown to people who are interested in what you're offering. This is where it really starts hurting your long-form content growth. The algorithm thinks your videos aren't performing well, so it stops promoting them. But the real problem is your content. It's being shown to the wrong people. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but surely some people do discover long-form content through shorts. And you'd be right. Some people do. But I challenge anyone giving you conflicting advice to show you the actual data, proving that short viewers also consume long-form content in meaningful numbers. Not just theory or assumptions, but real numbers from real channels showing that suggested traffic for long-form videos comes from related content, not from random algorithmic chaos. Here's what John was also wondering about. Should he be creating specific content for Instagram, TikTok, and other platforms? This is where we need to get really strategic about time management. Remember, John is still a fully functioning vascular surgeon. He has performing operations 4 days a week and has carved out Fridays to work on his content creation project. Time is his most precious resource, so every minute needs to count. The approach they've taken is actually quite clever. They focus all their energy on creating the best possible long-form videos. Then, in post-production, the team breaks those videos down into shorter clips for YouTube Shorts and other platforms. Is this the optimal way to do it? Well, that depends on what you're trying to achieve. If your goal is to get the maximum number of views and followers across all platforms, then creating dedicated short-form content for each platform will probably perform better. But here's the thing. It takes significantly more time and energy. So you have to choose. Do you want to spend your limited time creating multiple pieces of dedicated short-form content? Or do you want to focus on creating in-depth, valuable long-form content that can then be repurposed? For someone like John, who has decades of medical expertise to share and limited time to create content, focusing on long-form makes perfect sense. The knowledge transfer happens in the long-form content. That's where people actually learn something meaningful. Short-form content is brilliant for inspiration and entertainment, but it's not where deep education happens. If your goal is to genuinely help people understand complex topics, whether that's cardiovascular health, business strategy, or any other expertise you might have, then long-form is your best friend. Now, here's where John's story gets even more interesting. What started as a simple goal to sell more nutritional supplements has evolved into something much bigger and more meaningful. After 23 years in surgical practice, John has reached a point where, while he still loves helping individual patients, the work has become somewhat routine. Can you imagine that? Performing life-saving surgery has become routine. That tells you something about the level of expertise we're dealing with here. But John has realized something profound. He can potentially impact far more lives by sharing his knowledge online than he ever could by treating patients one at a time in his clinic. And here's the part that really gets him fired up. When he started looking at what's available on YouTube in his field, he was shocked by the amount of misinformation, pseudoscience, and downright dangerous advice being shared. This isn't about attacking other creators or making reaction videos to bad advice. It's about providing an authoritative, science-based perspective so that people have access to reliable information when they need it most. Think about this for a moment. Cardiovascular disease kills more people than all cancers combined. Yet, we hear far more about cancer in the media. Why? Because cardiovascular disease manifests in so many different ways. It's not just heart attacks. We're talking about strokes, arterial disease, circulation problems, and countless other conditions that all fall under the cardiovascular umbrella. John has the expertise to educate people about all of these conditions. He could literally save lives just by helping people recognize symptoms, understand prevention strategies, and make better health decisions. But here's the challenge. How do you establish authority and credibility in a space where anyone can claim to be an expert? This is where your credentials become a powerful tool, not just in the content itself, but in how you present that content to the world. If you're a cardiovascular surgeon talking about heart health, that carries infinitely more weight than a random fitness influencer sharing the same information. But you've got to make that expertise clear from the very beginning. It needs to be in your titles, your thumbnails, your channel branding, and the opening moments of every video you create. Now, here's a question that comes up constantly in these discussions. What should you focus on if you want to grow quickly? Shorts are definitely the fastest way to get views, subscribers, and that initial dopamine hit of seeing your numbers go up. But here's the catch. They don't do much after that. If your goal is education, if you want to genuinely help people understand complex topics, if you're rebuilding towards any kind of business model that requires trust and deep relationships with your audience, then long-form content is absolutely essential. Think about it this way. People don't buy supplements, courses, or have value services based on a 30-second video they saw on TikTok. They buy from people they know, like, and trust. And that trust comes from consuming hours of valuable content, getting to know the creator's expertise, and building a genuine relationship over time. Short-form content is fantastic for reach and inspiration. But long-form content is where transformation happens. It's where you actually educate people, change their perspectives, and build the kind of authority that leads to real impact. So if you're choosing between creating 3 long-form videos per week versus 1 long-form video, plus loads of dedicated short-form content, choose the 3 long-form videos every single time. Here's why this approach is so powerful. You can always repurpose long-form content into short-form later. It's much harder to go the other way around. When you have a 20-minute educational video, your team can create dozens of short clips from it. But when you have dozens of unconnected short clips, you can't magically turn them into a cohesive educational experience. Plus, as you scale your content creation, you should be getting more views and subscribers from all your short-form content combined across multiple platforms. YouTube Shorts, plus TikTok, plus Instagram Reels, plus Facebook Reels should, in theory, give you broader reach than your YouTube long-form content alone. But here's the crucial question. What matters more, reach or impact? If you're just chasing numbers, then short form is the way to go. If you're trying to build a business model that requires deep relationships and trust, long form wins every time. Now, let's talk about John's existing content assets. 2.5 years ago, John and his colleagues started a podcast called the Lymphcast. focusing on lymphatic problems, lymphedema, lipedema, and vein issues that don't get nearly enough attention in mainstream medicine. Here's the fascinating part. They created 70 episodes, each about an hour long. That's 70 hours of world-class medical content. The quality of information is absolutely incredible. There's literally nothing else like it available anywhere. But here's what they didn't know about: thumbnails, titles, hooks, or the first 30 seconds of their videos. They were essentially recording Zoom calls and uploading them to YouTube as an afterthought. The result, after 2.5 years, they had 800 subscribers. Compare that to John's new channel, which has gained over 2,000 subscribers in just a few weeks by applying proper YouTube principles. Same quality information, but presented in a way that actually allows people to discover it. This raises an interesting question. Should John repurpose some of that existing content for his new channel? The answer is absolutely yes, but it needs to be done strategically. You can't just take an hour-long podcast episode and dump it onto YouTube with the same boring intro and expect it to perform. But you can identify the best moments, the most valuable insights, and create new content around them. Here's how this might work. Take a segment where John shares crucial medical advice. Cut out any slow intros or irrelevant parts. Add a proper hook at the beginning that immediately tells people why they should keep watching. Maybe provide a bit of context to help people understand the significance of what they are about to learn. Suddenly, you've got valuable content that can stand on its own, reach new audiences, and provide massive value to people who need this information. The key is making sure that whatever you repurpose features John as the primary expert, not his co-hosts. People are coming to the Dr. John channel to learn from Dr. John, not to hear from other doctors. This is actually a brilliant way to get more leverage from content creation. Instead of starting from scratch every single week, you can supplement your new content with the best moments from 70 hours of existing material. Think about it. If John records just 2 minutes of new context for each repurposed segment, he could have an extra video per week without spending hours on research and preparation. Now, let's talk about content, strategy, and frequency. John was wondering if one long-form video per week is enough, or if he should be doing more. One per week is a solid foundation, but it's really about how efficiently you can create content once you know your topics. Here's the thing. If someone gives John a title about cardiovascular health, he can talk about it immediately. He doesn't need to do research, create outlines, or spend hours preparing. His preparation is the 23 years of surgical experience he already has. But if someone asks him to create content about trending topics outside his expertise, that's when things get complicated and time-consuming. This is where content batching becomes incredibly powerful. Instead of trying to create one video every Friday, what if John filmed 3 videos on one Friday? He's already at the camera, he's already in the right mindset, and he's already carved out the time. It's much more efficient to record multiple videos in one session than to spread them across multiple weeks. The question becomes, how many videos can you realistically create in your available time? John has roughly 4 hours every Friday. That's actually quite a lot of time for someone with his level of expertise. If he can talk about topics without extensive preparation, he could easily create 3 20-minute videos in that time frame. That would give him enough content to post Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the entire week, all created in one focused session. But here's the key. The topics need to be in his wheelhouse. If he has to spend an hour researching each topic, then the math doesn't work. But if someone can give him titles within his areas of expertise, he should be able to create content quickly and efficiently. This is where having a proper content strategy becomes crucial. Instead of randomly picking topics each week, what if you had clear content categories? For John, that might be Category 1, cardiovascular health, heart disease, arterial problems, stroke prevention. Category 2, vein and lymphatic issues, varicose veins, circulation problems, lymphedema. Category 3, nutritional supplements and natural health approaches. Category 4, broader health topics that interest him, like teen anxiety or other issues he is passionate about. With these categories defined, content creation becomes much more systematic. Instead of asking, what should I talk about this week? You're asking, which category should I cover this week? and what specific topic within that category. And here's where it gets really powerful. You can start to see which categories resonate most with your audience. Maybe cardiovascular content gets twice as many views as supplement content. That tells you something important about what your audience wants to hear about. Every month, you can review the data and see which content series are working and which aren't. Then, you can double down on what works and experiment with new ideas for what doesn't. This data-driven approach is so much more effective than just throwing content at the wall and hoping something sticks. Now, here's where John's journey becomes really interesting from a business perspective. He's not just creating content for the sake of it. He owns a nutraceutical company called Vita Support MD, which creates supplements specifically for people with circulation problems. This gives him a clear business model that aligns perfectly with his content. But here's what's brilliant about his approach. He's not leading with the sales pitch. He's leading with education and value. The business model follows naturally from the trust and authority he builds through his content. This is exactly how online business should work. You become known as the expert in your field. You help people solve their problems, and then you offer products or services that naturally extend that help. Compare this to the typical approach of starting with a product and then trying to convince people to buy it. John's approach is infinitely more sustainable and effective. And here's the thing, when you're genuinely helping people with valuable content, the business opportunities tend to create themselves. People start asking what supplements you recommend, what services you offer, how they can work with you more closely. It's the difference between push marketing and pull marketing. Instead of pushing your products onto people who might not want them, you're attracting people who are actively looking for solutions you can provide. Now, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in these discussions: the importance of staying in your lane. There are creators who talk about everything under the sun. One day it's supplements, the next day it's politics, the day after that it's random trending topics. And while that approach might work for pure entertainment channels, it's not effective for building authority in a specific field. John could certainly create content about trending topics. If a public figure had a heart condition, he could absolutely comment on it from his medical expertise. But should he spend time researching and commenting on every trending topic that comes along? Probably not, unless he's already following those trends and genuinely has something valuable to add. The most efficient approach is to focus on topics where he already has deep expertise. He can create content quickly, confidently, and with real authority. That's where his competitive advantage lies. This doesn't mean he can never branch out or experiment with different topics, but the core of his content should be built on his decades of medical experience. Think about it this way. If John tried to compete with general health influencers on topics like fitness routines or diet trends, he'd be starting from scratch in an incredibly crowded space. But when he talks about cardiovascular disease, arterial health, or vein problems, there's literally no one else on YouTube with his level of expertise and credibility. That's a huge competitive moat that would be crazy to abandon. Here's another crucial element that often gets missed: the power of consistent scheduling. It's not just about creating great content. It's about creating great content consistently and predictably. When your audience knows that new videos come out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they start looking forward to them. They become part of people's routines. This is where batching becomes so valuable. Instead of scrambling every week to create content, you can film multiple videos in one session and then have them scheduled weeks in advance. This gives you consistency without the constant pressure of weekly deadlines. Plus, it allows you to maintain quality because you're not rushing to meet publication schedules. And here's a bonus benefit. When you have content scheduled in advance, you can be more strategic about timing. You can align content with relevant health awareness months, respond to seasonal health concerns, or coordinate with product launches or speaking engagements. Now, let's address something that comes up in almost every content creation discussion: the fear of running out of things to talk about. This is rarely a real problem for true experts in their fields. John could probably create daily content about cardiovascular health for years without running out of valuable topics to cover. The real challenge is identifying things to talk about. It is prioritizing the most important and valuable topics for your audience. Here's a simple framework that works really well. Start with the questions people actually ask you. If you're a medical professional, what do your patients ask about most frequently? Those are probably the topics that will resonate most with your online audience too. Then look at common misconceptions in your field. What do people get wrong about cardiovascular health? What myths need to be debunked. These make for incredibly engaging content because you're literally correcting misinformation. Next, consider the seasonal or timely aspects of your expertise. Are there health concerns that spike at certain times of year? Are there new research studies that change best practices? These give you natural content hooks that feel relevant and timely. Finally, think about the different levels of your audience's knowledge. Some people are complete beginners who need basic explanations. Others might be quite knowledgeable and want to dive into more advanced topics. You can create content for both groups. With this framework, you'll never run out of valuable content ideas. Now, here's something really important about scaling content creation. As your channel grows and your impact increases, content creation starts to become more important to your overall mission. At some point, you might decide that reaching millions of people online is more valuable than treating individual patients in your clinic. That's a profound shift, and it's not one to take lightly. But for someone like John, who is already 23 years into his surgical career and feeling like the work has become routine, it might be the natural next chapter. The beautiful thing about building an online presence is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. John can continue his surgical practice while building his YouTube channel. As the channel grows and proves its impact, he can gradually shift more of his time and energy towards content creation. This gradual transition allows you to test and validate your online business model before making any dramatic career changes. And here's the thing that makes this approach so powerful. The expertise doesn't disappear. If anything, continuing to practice medicine while creating content makes the content more valuable. John isn't just talking about cardiovascular health from memory. He is actively treating patients and staying current with the latest developments in his field. That real-world, current experience is incredibly valuable for content creation. It means he is not just sharing textbook knowledge, he is sharing insights from actual patient interactions and real-world applications. This brings up an interesting question about authenticity in content creation. One of the biggest challenges online creators face is maintaining credibility and authenticity as they scale. It's easy to become just another talking head sharing generic advice. But when you're still actively practicing your expertise, whether that's medicine, law, engineering, or any other professional field, you maintain that authentic connection to real-world application of your knowledge. This is a huge competitive advantage that shouldn't be underestimated. Now, let's talk about something that's crucial for long-term success but often gets overlooked. Building systems and processes that don't depend entirely on you. Right now, John is the bottleneck in his content creation process. Everything depends on his Friday filming sessions. If he hits sick, goes on holiday, or has a particularly busy week at the clinic, content creation stops. As the channel grows, it becomes important to build systems that can function somewhat independently. This might mean training team members to identify good content topics from trending health news, creating templates for different types of videos so the production process is more standardized, building a library of evergreen content that can be published during busy periods, developing processes for repurposing existing content in new ways. The goal isn't to remove John from the process. His expertise is the core value proposition. The goal is to make the process more efficient and less dependent on perfect timing and circumstances. Here's another aspect that's worth considering: the compound effect of consistent content creation. When you first start creating content, each video feels like it exists in isolation. You put a lot of effort into creating something, and maybe it gets a few hundred views. It can feel like you're not making much progress. But here's what happens over time. Someone might discover your channel through a video you created 6 months ago, then binge watch your entire content library and become a loyal follower. That's the compound effect in action. This is why consistency matters so much more than perfection. It's better to create good content regularly than to create perfect content sporadically. And here's the beautiful thing about educational content in fields like medicine. It doesn't become outdated quickly. A video about cardiovascular health fundamentals will be just as valuable next year as it is today. This evergreen quality means your content library becomes increasingly valuable over time. Now, let's address something that many content creators struggle with: dealing with criticism and negative feedback. When you put yourself out there as an expert, especially in a field as important as medicine, you're going to face scrutiny. Some of it will be constructive and helpful. Some of it will be completely off base or even malicious. The key is developing a thick skin while remaining open to legitimate feedback. If another medical professional respectfully disagrees with something you've said and provides evidence for their position, that's valuable feedback worth considering. But if random internet trolls are attacking your credentials or spreading misinformation in your comments, that's just noise to be ignored or removed. Having clear community guidelines and active comment moderation becomes really important as your channel grows. You want to foster meaningful discussions while preventing your comment section from becoming a breeding ground for misinformation or negativity. Here's something else worth considering: the opportunity to collaborate with other experts in your field. As John's channel grows, he'll have opportunities to interview other specialists, collaborate on content, or participate in expert panels. These collaborations can be incredibly valuable for several reasons. They expose you to new audiences who follow the other experts they add. Credibility through association with other respected professionals. They allow you to cover topics outside your specific expertise. They keep the content fresh and varied for your regular audience. But collaborations need to be strategic. You want to work with people who share your commitment to accurate, helpful information and who serve audiences that align with yours. Now, let's talk about something that's absolutely crucial for long-term success. Measuring the right metrics. It's easy to get obsessed with vanity metrics like subscriber counts and total view numbers. While these aren't completely meaningless, they don't tell you much about whether you're actually achieving your goals. For someone like John, whose ultimate goal is to help people improve their health and potentially grow his supplement business, more meaningful metrics might include how long people are watching his videos, indicating genuine engagement with the content, how often people are watching multiple videos in one session, suggesting they find real value, comments and questions that demonstrate people are applying his advice, email subscribers or website visitors who are taking deeper engagement actions, actual business inquiries or supplement sales that can be traced back to the content. These metrics tell you whether your content is actually achieving its purpose, not just generating views. Here's another important consideration: the global reach of online content. When John was treating patients in his clinic, he could help maybe 10 to 20 people per day. But with YouTube, he can potentially reach thousands or even millions of people with a single video. That's an incredible multiplication of impact. But it also comes with additional responsibility. When you're giving health advice to a global audience, you need to be extra careful about being clear about limitations, encouraging people to consult with their own healthcare providers, and avoiding anything that could be construed as direct medical advice to specific individuals. This is where having proper disclaimers and being very clear about the educational nature of your content becomes crucial. Now, here's something that often surprises new content creators: the importance of video thumbnails and titles. John mentioned that his previous podcast had amazing content, but terrible production values. Part of that production includes the visual elements that help people decide whether to watch your content in the first place. Your thumbnail is like the book cover for your video. Your title is like the headline for a newspaper article. These elements can literally make the difference between a video getting 1,000 views or 100,000 views, regardless of how good the actual content is. This might seem superficial, but it's actually about respect for your audience's time and attention. When someone is scrolling through hundreds of potential videos to watch, you need to quickly and clearly communicate why your content is worth their precious time. A good thumbnail and title combination should immediately tell someone what the video is about, why it matters to them, what kind of expertise or unique perspective you're bringing. This isn't about being clickbait, why, or misleading. It's about being clear and compelling in your communication. Here's something else that's worth discussing: the seasonal nature of health content. Certain health topics become more relevant at different times of year. Heart health might spike in awareness during February American Heart Month. Circulation issues might be more relevant in winter when people are less active. Weight and fitness content typically spikes in January. Understanding these patterns allows you to plan content strategically and ride natural waves of interest in your topics. But here's the key: you don't want to be reactive to these trends. You want to be prepared for them. If you know that heart health content typically performs well in February, you can create that content in January and have it ready to go when interest peaks. This kind of strategic planning is what separates successful content creators from those who are always scrambling to keep up. Now, let's address something that comes up frequently in discussions about content creation: the question of equipment and production quality. John mentioned that his podcast had great content but poor production quality. Does that matter? The answer is, it depends on your audience and your goals. For educational content, especially in professional fields like medicine, production quality matters less than content quality. People will tolerate mediocre audio or video if they're getting genuinely valuable information, but there's a baseline level of quality that's necessary for credibility. If your audio is so bad that people can't understand you, or if your video is so dark that people can't see you, then production quality becomes a barrier to your message. The good news is that you don't need expensive equipment to meet that baseline. A decent microphone, good lighting, and a stable internet connection can get you 90% of the way there. As your channel grows and becomes more important to your overall business, you can gradually invest in better equipment and production support. Here's something that might surprise you: the power of consistency in presentation. When people subscribe to your channel, they're not just subscribing to your content, they're subscribing to an experience. They come to expect a certain style, format, and quality level from your videos. This doesn't mean every video needs to be identical, but there should be recognizable elements that make your content distinctly yours. This might be how you structure your videos, your speaking style, your visual branding, or even just your personality coming through consistently. This consistency builds trust and familiarity, which are crucial for educational content. People need to feel like they know and trust you before they'll take your health advice seriously. Now let's talk about something that's particularly important for medical professionals creating content: the balance between being authoritative and being accessible. John has decades of medical training and experience. He could easily create content that's technically perfect but completely incomprehensible to regular people. Alternatively, he could oversimplify things to the point where the content loses its value. The sweet spot is explaining complex concepts in simple terms without losing accuracy or nuance. This is actually a skill in itself, and it's one that improves with practice. Some techniques that work well: using analogies that relate medical concepts to everyday experiences, breaking complex processes into step-by-step explanations, defining medical terms clearly when you first use them, using visual aids or diagrams when possible to illustrate concepts. The goal is to make your expertise accessible without dumbing it down. Here's another crucial aspect that often gets overlooked: the importance of addressing your audience's emotional state. When people are researching health topics online, they're often worried, scared, or confused. They might have symptoms they don't understand, or they might have received a diagnosis that frightens them. Creating content that acknowledges these emotional states while providing clear, helpful information is incredibly valuable. It is not just about sharing facts. It is about helping people feel more confident and informed about their health decisions. This emotional intelligence in content creation can be just as important as technical expertise. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive into John's journey, let's talk about the bigger picture. What John is doing represents a fundamental shift in how expertise gets shared in our society. For centuries, medical knowledge was primarily transferred through "your time is coming. Keep believing. Keep fighting. Don't just watch. Go out and prove them wrong." Thank you for being part of the journey. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.